Hello and welcome to the Unit 2 Interim Study Guide. So this is for Math 6, 2021. And let's jump right in. The first thing I'm going to do, of course, is put my name, date, and class period. DJ Tay, whoop whoop. And today's date, may not be when you see it, but today's date is 10/15/21. And let's see which class period am I going to represent today. I'm going to represent number 7. All right, number 1. Each page in Mrs. Johnston's photo album holds 14 pictures. The table shows the relationship between pages and photos. How many photos will fit on 12 pages? Okay, so let's look at this table. It is a table of equivalent ratios. So 1 page to 14 photos. When I multiply that by 2, I get 2 pages. And remember, whatever I do to one part of the ratio, I have to do to the other part. So times that 14 by 2, and I get 28 pages. Same thing when I go from 1 to 5. I'm multiplying by 5. And that means I'm going from 14 to 70 by multiplying by 5. So now, when I go from 1 to 12, I am multiplying by 12. So that means I need to also here multiply by 12. So I have my 14 photos times 12, and I get 168. So how many photos will fit on 12 pages? 168 photos. Number 2, a vehicle travels 220 miles in 11 hours. At this rate, how many miles will the vehicle travel in 5 hours? So it's an important word here, rate. So this means that I'm first finding the unit rate here. So let's go ahead and set up our proportion lines. And because I'm finding unit rate, I'm going to go ahead and put 1 here. But I have to find what unit is going to be for that 1. So I know 220 miles in 11 hours. That means I want to know how many miles in 1 hour. So in the denominator will be our hours. So I have my 1 hour there. Now I take from the problem the 11 hours. And for that 11 hours, there were 220 miles. So I am going to use M for miles for what we do not yet know. I'm going to point my first arrow there and point my second arrow in the other part of the ratio in the same direction. So how am I going from 11 hours down to 1 hour? I am dividing by 11. So that means up here I need to also divide by 11. And I'm going to pop it to the calculator, 220 divided by 11. And I get 20. So I know that M equals 20. And what that means is that there are 20 miles per hour. So now that I know that there are 20 miles per hour, it wants to know, well, what happens when a vehicle travels 5 hours? So 20 times 5 equals 100. So that means that the vehicle will travel in 5 hours, 100 miles. Number 3. An ice cream factory has 4 machines that make the same type of ice cream. The rate of production for each machine is shown in the table below. Based on the data given, which machine works at the fastest rate? All right, so let's go ahead. We have that word rate again. So this means that I am solving, my phone thinks I'm talking to it. This means that I am solving for each one of these machines the unit rate. So I'm going to show you 2 types of ways that we can quickly solve this. So the first way, let's look at machine A. And I am going to, I know I'm setting up a rate. So let's go ahead and get my lines set up with my 1 there. And I see numbers of gallons made, in this case 300 gallons in 6 hours. So I want to know how many gallons can be made in 1 hour. So I'm comparing that to the 6 hours for 300 gallons. And I'm going to use G for gallon because I have to solve for that. So now let's go ahead and draw my arrows. I'm going from 6 down to 1 by dividing by 6. So that means up here I need to also divide by 6. And 300 divided by 6 gives me 50. So that means that G equals 50. So this means that machine A makes 50 gallons per hour. 50 gallons per hour. So I'm just going to write a 50 here. Now, notice that I took this 300 and I divided it by 6. Yes? That's the same thing that was happening already in my setup. All right, 300 divided by 6. So that's how I'm going to solve the rest of these. I'm going to take the number of gallons and divide it by the time in hours. So let's solve for B. B has 120 gallons, and I'm going to divide that by the 4 hours, and I get 30. So this means that machine B makes 30 gallons per hour. Let's look at C, 250 gallons divided by the 5 hours it takes. Hey, here's another one with another 50. And let's look at the last one, 210 gallons divided by the 3 hours it takes. And this makes 70. All right, so now that I've solved the rate per hour, gallons per hour, let's look at it. It says, which machine works at the fastest rate? You might be tempted to think that if it's, 30, it has the lowest number. That means that that's the fastest. But I want you to be careful here, because what this means is that 30 in 1 hour, it only makes 30 gallons. But this one, machine D, makes 70 whole gallons in 1 hour. So the machine that works the fastest will be machine D. Number 4, DJ Tay is having a bake sale for the local zoo. Her recipe for cookies uses 4 cups of flour to make 60 cookies. How many cups of flour will DJ Tay need to make 420 cookies? All right, so I see that I have a, I have where I can set up a proportion here, okay? There are 2 ways that I can set this up. I can look at it from flour to cookies or cookies to flour. All right. So in the problem, it says, how many cups of flour would DJ Tay need to make 420 cookies? I'm just going to use it in that order in this case. Okay. So let's solve it here. So cups of flour to cookies. So in the first one is 4 to 60 ratio. 4 cups of flour to 60 cookies. So I'm going to set up my proportion here. I noted down here the 60 is cookies. And remember, I suggested that you label what that denominator is so that you can make sure you're comparing the same 2 things. So I want to know for 420 cookies, how many cups of flour, and I'm going to use F for flour. All right, so I am going to point to what I do not yet know, point my arrow in the same direction, and I'm going to ask myself, how am I going from 60 cookies up to 420 cookies? 60 cookies up to 420. So I know I got to multiply by something. So let's see what. I see my arrow is pointing to 420, so that's what I'm going to put into the calculator first. And then I'm going to click divide, and what's at the tail end of my arrow here is 60. So 420 divided by 60, and I get 7. That means that I had to multiply by 7 here. And I could check that too, just to be safe. 60 times 7 equals 420. Bam, got it. So up here, I'm going to also multiply by 7. And 4 times 7 is 28. So my F equals 28. So the question says, how many cups of flour would DJ Tay need to make 420 cookies? The answer is 28 cups of flour. All right, number 5. Mr. Cannon paid $16.20 for 8 gallons of orange juice. At this rate, there it is again, rate, how much would he pay for 5 gallons of orange juice? All right, so let's set up for our unit rate. Put my 1 here. I know how much 8 gallons cost, so I need to know how much 1 gallon cost. So I'm going to compare that 1 gallon to what's in my problem, and it's 8 gallons. And at 8 gallons is for $16.20. And I don't know how much he will pay or the price, so I'm going to use P and draw my first arrow to what I do not yet know, and my second arrow in the same direction. And I ask, how am I going from 8 gallons down to 1 gallon? I am dividing by 8. So that means up here I need to also divide by 8. So let's pop that into the calculator. $16.20, so 16.20 divided by 8. And I get 2.025. And you might be tempted to go ahead and put in that 2.025. But remember, we're looking for a dollar amount. And a dollar amount is in only 2 decimal places. So I need to look at this third decimal place when it's available and see if I need to round up this number. So 5 or more. And notice it's a 5. So that means that this is going to round up to $2.03. So that's my price per gallon. All right, $2.03 per gallon. And now that I know that, I need to go back to my problem. It says it wants to know for 5 gallons. So I'm simply multiplying that $2.03 times the 5 gallons. And I get $10.15. For the 5 gallons. All right, number 6. The automatic car wash, it'd be helpful if I pull it down, right? The automatic car wash at a service station can wash 108 cars over a 3-hour period. What is the average number of cars that can be washed in 30 minutes? Okay, so this one is a little bit tricky. So it's asking me about 30 minutes. Okay, but first I know how many how many cars can be washed in 3 hours. I need to know how many cars can be washed in 1 hour. So I'm going to find the unit rate. So let's go ahead and set up our proportions. And again, I need to know for 1 hour. And I'm comparing that to the 3 hours in my problem. And that's for 108 cars. So I'm going to use C for cars so that we can find out how many get washed in the 1 hour. I'm going from 3 down to 1 hour by dividing by 3. So up here, I'm also going to divide by 3. And I get 36. So C equals 36 cars per hour. But remember, they didn't ask me for 1 hour. They want to know in 30 minutes. Well, I know that 30 minutes is half of 1 hour. So that means I need to find half of 36. So 36 divided by 2 is equal to 18. So that means 18 cars on average can be washed in 30 minutes. Number 7. A waiter receives a tip of $11.75. If this tip represents 30% of the price of the meal, what is the price of the meal? All right, so we are setting up a percent proportion. So I need to put my 100 here. And notice I have 30%, so that means I'm putting 30 over my 100. And a waiter received $11.75. Notice it's not all that he received, so it's not the whole amount. So this goes into my numerator. And I'm looking for the whole amount or the total amount. So you can use a T, you can use a double, it doesn't matter. W, excuse me. Or you can use P for the price of the meal. And I am going to go ahead and have to work this problem out using a calculator, and that's a-okay. So first I'm going to point in the direction of what I do not know and point my second arrow in the same direction. And remember, I said that we're going to have to use a calculator because, let's see, I cannot make an easy jump. I cannot make an easy jump between 30 and 100. And I can reduce this using 10 and go down to 3 to 100. But notice it's a decimal. So $11.75, that's a decimal. So I'm going to need to use a calculator anyways. So I'm not even going to bother with all of the reducing here. So remember the calculator trick of putting in what is at the arrow. That's 1175. And I'm going to divide that by what's at the end of the arrow. All right, and notice that I get 0.391666666. Yeah. All right. So that means that when I take 1175 and I times it by 0.39, I am going to get, hold on, 11.75, excuse me, 30 times 0.39. You could put 0.391 even if you wanted to. You're going to get about 11.748, which rounds to 11.75. All right, so if I did that at that end, now I'm going to have to do the same thing to my this part of my ratio here. So 100 times 0.391 is going to give me 39.1. And we added 0 because money has 2 decimal places. Okay. And guys, whenever you are using the calculator, you can always check your work. You can always check your work. And matter of fact, I'm going to be more exact here, because remember, my 11.75 divided by 30 gave me this decimal, right? 0.3916666. So that's like saying 0.3917 rounded up. So I'm going to times that by 100, and it's actually going to give me $39.17. So that's going to be the more exact answer there. So that was the price of the meal. Number 8, Sarah scored 20% of the goals scored by her soccer team during one season. Way to go, Sarah. If her team scored a total of 75 goals during the season, how many did Sarah score? So notice we have a percent going on here. So I'm going to set up a percent proportion, putting my 100. And I have 20%, putting my 20 there. And it says her team scored a total of 75 goals. So that's my whole number. And I want to know how many did Sarah score. So I'm going to use S for Sarah's score. All right. S for Sarah's score. So let's point our arrows. Okay. So you may notice here that we have our 20 to 100. Our 20 to 100. And this 100 to 75 can't make an easy jump. But if I go ahead and I simplify this 20 to 100, I could make an easier jump. So 20 to 100, I can simplify this using a factor of 20. How many 20s do I get out of 20? 1. How many 20s do I get out of 100? 5. And I can make an easy jump between 75 and 5, from 5 up to 75. All right, and that's by multiplying by 15. And you may say, well, how would I know that? Well, you can use your multiplication chart, but let me also show you with the calculator. So I'm pointing to 75, and the tail end is 5. So it's 15. So that means I'm multiplying that 5 by 15. All right, so if I multiply down there by 15, I have to multiply up here by 15. And 1 times 15 is simply 15. So Sarah scored 15 of the goals. Number 9. A recipe for fruit punch requires 5.25 gallons of pineapple juice. How many quarts of pineapple juice are required for the recipe? So notice it tells us that 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. That's our conversion factor, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up as a unit rate. 1 gallon for 4 quarts. So I'm going to compare that gallons to gallons, and my problem is 5.25. And I'm trying to figure out the quarts. I'm going to use Q for quarts. I'm going from 1 gallon to 5.25 gallons by multiplying by 5.25. So that means up here I'm also going to multiply by 5.25. And I get 21. So how many quarts of pineapple juice are required? 21 quarts. Number 10. DJ Tay, whoop whoop, is now 68 inches tall. Yeah, I grew, okay? What about it? Okay, so what is her height in centimeters? And it gives us the conversion factor that 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. So that means if I have 1 inch, I multiply by 2.54. If I have 2 inches, I multiply that 2 by 2.54. 3 inches, multiply that 3 times 2.54. So again, that means that when I have 68 inches, I multiply by the 2.54, and I get 172.72. So that's how many centimeters that, I had this growth spurt at almost 40. Whoop, that's awesome. Let me show you that as a proportion, though. We're going to get the same answer, of course, but I want to show you how we set this up as a proportion. So I have 2.54 centimeters to 1 inch. So this is a unit rate. And put my 2.54 here, and I'm comparing that to 68 inches. And we want to know the centimeters. So let's go ahead and solve. I'm going from 1 inch to 68 inches by multiplying by 68. So that means up here I'm multiplying by 68, just like we did. And 2.54 times 68 means that C equals 172.72. So that's just a couple ways of looking at it. And we are done with our study guide. I hope this was helpful. You guys are going to do awesome on the test.